Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Between the Ears. We're double dipping today, and because of that, we're not going to have an episode tomorrow morning. But wanted to get Chris in here as he was at spring practice this morning, practice number 2. So wanted to get his thoughts on what he saw, what they were able to actually see at practice, and really for the first time talk about this team because we haven't really talked about much since really signing day. It's all been basketball, the coaching search, uh, dibble, dabble, a little bit of baseball. So getting back into the football scene here. So, Chris, what did you see, and what can you make out of it? Which is probably not much.
Well, surprisingly, day two, they without pads, they did a little light scrimmaging, offense versus defense. I don't, my recollection, they've never been able to do that. When you think about it, when Neil Brown took over, it was a whole new roster, obviously with new coaching staff. They're getting kind of everybody used to how they do things. Last year you saw a little, ramped up a little bit. But this year it's just like they're hitting the ground running. So that's a huge step forward for the program. Obviously, that has to do with Country Roads Trust, being able to retain all the talent and keeping guys in the program. And you're seeing a bigger, faster team. Obviously, don't know what's across the league, but I think right now, I mean, if you're a Mountaineer fan, it gives you a lot more optimism. Just to see them hit the ground, to see them hit the ground running. I mean, they're running offense day two.
Yeah.
Like it's fall practice, so it's huge. Guys are coaching them hard. It's good to see a lot of bodies out there for the corner and in the secondary. It's something else I just don't think that they've had. There's a lot of bodies and a lot of capable bodies that they can use this season. So really just impressed with how fast they're moving. Just on the second day of practice, right off the rip. I mean, we get there right when they're starting practice, and they were just full go right off the rip. So pretty impressive, considering where they were just 2 years ago when they were just trying to keep it together. Um,
They're just trying to get lined up right, know
it
what the
was
hell
it
they're
was
doing.
pre-Ren Baker. It was pre Country Road Trust. They were just basically band-aiding putting band-aids everywhere. The only place that they really didn't was offensive line. When you think about that offensive line over the last few years, some West Virginia kids and maybe not, and they might be starting to get a push more in NIL for offensive linemen now. But those guys kind of stuck together, and you still see that depth there along the offensive line. Obviously, don't get to see a lot because they're not in pads yet, but they'll be in pads Friday, ready full go. So, be kind of interesting to see them when they're next week in full pads, where they're at, how fast they're able to go when they can go full speed. They won't be tackling this time of year for injuries, obviously, but you can really got a glimpse of what this team is capable of. Unfortunately, even in the fall or anything, we won't really know what they have until they line up against somebody. But when you think about the way they played at Penn State for 3.5 quarters or so, or I guess three, 2.5, 3 quarters, whatever, they hung with the Penn State team. And they weren't this far ahead, and you come in the spring with your starting quarterback. You know who it is. There's no competition. Side note, I guess Nico's done really well. He looked more poised and confident today. He took over for Garrett on Monday, who was attending his grandfather's funeral. So, really, when you start looking at it, and you kind of thought about the roster and just kind of seeing them today, it's kind of like, okay, maybe they can take that next step. Maybe they can actually compete for a spot in Dallas for the Big 12 championship. So kind of exciting. It's early. Um, these guys are going to get adjusted to each other. They're going to know how each other play, and they're going to start making plays kind of based on that. But pretty exciting to kind of start right off the rip like that. Where man, they are full go. Like it's middle of fall camp.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the luxury of having your quarterback situation solved, right? You're not going to go into a battle this year. You've got virtually your entire offensive line back. Yeah, you'll lose, Doug Nestor and Zach Frazier, but you have guys that have experience already in Brandon Yates and Xavier Bosley's coming in from Jacksonville State. Nick Malone will throw himself into that mix as well. Johnny Williams, who everyone is extremely excited about. The defense, I mean, they've got a lot of pieces coming back too. They also added through the portal guys that have played a ton of football. So I mean, this to me, I mean, just I would have to jot it down on paper, but just glancing at it and just thinking about it in my head, it feels like the oldest team that Neil's had, right? I mean, and I think the benefit of that is you can do these things early. You're not spending as much time teaching now. With the portal, you're always teaching something because of the verbiage and all that stuff being different and what you're asked to do. But when you're not spending 60 to 70% of your practice teaching and you're just getting reps in, and you're maybe fixing things, that's you're way ahead of the curve, and you're not doing those things in the fall. That's what this is for. When you have a veteran team, that's the benefit of it.
Yeah, I mean they're still young, relatively young, especially at skill positions on offense. These guys are really entering their second year with a lot of playing time. Hudson Clement got bigger, Traylon Ray got bigger, and that's what you kind of expected, right? Coming into another year, you expect them to have a hard off season, get bigger, get stronger, get faster. So you're kind of seeing the work that led up by Mike Joseph, the strength and conditioning staff, their work that was done in the offseason. So you can see that. Um, so yeah, to, you just get kind of excited a little bit because you haven't seen that yet.
There's expectations this year too,
Right.
which is
Like
something that hasn't been around.
when guys are in their second, third year, like this is CJ Donaldson's third year. He's not going to get contact, but he was out there in that little light offense versus defense, no pads going against you. He's out there. So this is his third year. Jaheim White's second year. That's not a big leap, but look how much playing time he had last year, and he's a
Yeah.
natural running back. So maybe he does have that sophomore slump per se, where maybe people expect him to like double or triple his numbers from last year. Wouldn't quite expect that just because there's film on him, but how much did he get improved to where even if there's film on him, it's not going to matter. So there's a lot of little things. There's still a lot of attention to fundamentals, a lot of attention, always attention to the details. But just seeing Matt Moore out there coaching the offensive lineman, you're looking three deep, at this point in his time. They probably don't have a strong two deep yet, probably don't even have a strong eight across the board or nine that they would say they feel comfortable with. But they got the bodies now. So it's so different to where they were like, well, we have three guys. And it was like, well, we got four. Well, now we got five. But now, the coaches, they always expect more. And they're going to demand more at this point. So it's probably it's way too early for them to even really think depth. They're not even really thinking along those lines. But you can kind of see like, okay, you've got some pieces in the secondary that was a question mark, and you've got some guys out there that, okay, they're light on their feet. Like they've got some good footwork. You can see. So some of it's going to have to be speed, open field speed. We're just not going to see a lot of it. Obviously, a lot of it on this day too. But as the spring progresses, and I think as you get to the spring game, it's going to be like, okay, like this is far different than the spring games that we've seen.
Right.
Some of the action that we've seen in the past. Like these guys are clicking. You got good leadership. That's in Garrett Green. That goes a very long way. He's very energetic, and it goes through the team. So just with that alone, with Garrett Green and his ability, and just seeing how much he's progressed with his accuracy and everything, he expects to be over 70%. This year he said it publicly. So obviously when fans hear that, they're going to hold him to it. So
Yeah.
he's given himself high expectations, and I think the coaches are just demanding a lot of these guys, and they're just responding right now. And it it's only day two. I think what you don't want to hear next time we hear the coaches or Neil Brown is they had a down day, right? We've heard that in the past where, well, we're in our second week and they kind of didn't come out with energy. I think it's not worrisome, but I think if you can go through this whole spring where they don't say that, that's a big, big, big step in the right direction.
Yeah, and the more I think about it too, I mean, this is really also the first off season where, or really the first spring where you really don't have concerns at quarterback. Like Jarrett Daggy, he did return as a starter. Everyone knew that he was going to be the starter that second year, but there were still question marks. Like, was he going to make much of a step? And actually, he kind of regressed in a lot of areas. And I don't know. I don't get that sense with Garrett Green. He was phenomenal this past season. Yes, the completion percentage was extremely low, but they took a lot of shots downfield. We know the dinks and dunks, that's got to get fixed 100%. But with his ability to make plays with his feet, we've seen the arm. Like, I think this is the best you have to feel about the quarterback spot going into a new season. But the one thing that I really am intrigued about is how this running back situation kind of divvies out, because you already know CJ Donaldson, you know Jaheim White, they're going to get their touches, they're going to get their carries. CJ, as you said, probably not going to get a lot of work in the spring, but you have Jalen Anderson, who could have very easily entered the portal and probably found a home somewhere else and got more playing time, or assured that he would get more playing time. He's sticking around, at least for now. Chad Scott talked about him the other day and said that he's a guy that he understood that whole situation, but he doesn't feel like he's been at his best yet. And for him to enter the portal not at his best, that to me shows a lot of not only confidence but awareness by Jalen that, hey, I don't need to bounce just because I haven't blossomed yet.
Yeah, I'll say this for that. I would argue in Day's second year, the receivers didn't
Oh yeah,
perform.
that was
And there were still offensive line issues at that point in time. But yeah, Anderson's definitely is an interesting player. Here's a kid that stuck around and just continues to wait. And if you think about it,
it's worked out for a lot of guys.
TJ hasn't been healthy for a full season. Jaheim got banged up. Like those guys are going to get banged up. So he'll have his opportunity and good for him. Like it's rare in this day and age that like if I'm not good enough to start here, I'm not going to go to a lower level. What good's that going to do? Like if I can surpass these guys, then yeah, then I would have a shot at the next level. So that's really what it takes in today's age. You can have a loaded backfield. You're still going to get tape from practice. You want to
Yeah.
get that tape, in-game tape, obviously. Um, but I don't think any of these guys right now are NFL caliber running back, so I don't think that's really the case. But yeah, you still have depth there. Shame lost DJ Oliver. I was really kind of excited about him, but Anderson really can't be that guy. He's a veteran, been in around the program, so CJ's not having a full spring. Hopefully he remains healthy. You hope all these guys remain healthy. But if Jalen Eers can make that push, all of a sudden you can start moving CJ around because he was a tight end at one point, if you
Yeah.
remember. And they've talked about just trying to find ways to get him, utilizing him, trying to get him the ball in other areas. So if you can bring Jalen Anderson can play his way into the mix, and all of a sudden you do have options, especially when you have Rodney Gallagher that's lined up in different spots as well. So then all of a sudden you got two guys in different spots that can get the ball. Plus you'd have Jaheim or Jalen who could play his way in the backfield. All of a sudden your offense is really really dynamic at that point, and I think that's just something else that they can really build with the way they're hitting the ground. Like they're going to be able to build off the offense they had last year, and you're going to be able to
And
see new things and be able to scheme new things. And with that, as the season progresses, where kind of where they've hit a wall, um, now when that happens, when people kind of can figure stuff out, they can hit them with something else. So the playbook's going to be expanding, and again, I think that's really exciting for this program that just has been poached, that was poached year after year after year and just losing talent, could just never find their footing. Now they're finding their footing. Now they're getting the culture they want. And you can see it just really paying off rapidly this off season.
well, I mean, I think that's just it. I mean, you saw those first few years with Neil when he called the plays pre Graham Harrell. It was just guys were stuck on one side of the field or in one spot at receiver, running backs. You kind of knew what their strengths were in the run game. These running backs have different schemes. They can all hit you with different things: inside zone, gap, stretch. They can do a lot of different things. These receivers, they can line up all over the field. And we saw as the season went on, really from I think about the Houston game on, we really saw Neil get very creative and just throw a whole bunch of different looks at defenses. It was kind of fun to watch. It was almost like Sean McVay-ish or Mike McDaniel-ish. I don't want to go to that level of brilliance, but I'm just saying like it was a different kind of offense that we've seen before because of the personnel that he has. The more that that talent gets developed, the more we're going to see stuff like that, and teams are not going to be able to defend it like they had in years past. Now, sticking on the offensive side of the ball before we go over the defense. Again, this is just your one day of practice that you were there. Any new guys, transfers, or freshmen that just watching them on the field, you're like, okay, this guy might be something.
I guess, Jaden Bray's been talked a lot about.
Oh yeah,
Transfer from Oklahoma State. Definitely saw some nice things from him today. And really, it's probably the best the receivers have looked under Neil Brown. Still a work in progress. They're still young. Still got a lot to learn, but it really is probably the best. I know that bar was set pretty low previously. They haven't been very good. Good kids, no less, but just really didn't have the talent and really just really got look. They've made plays in practice. Saw them make catches today in practice. It's really just got to translate on the field consistently. You want to see guys when healthy, maybe put up a 100-yard game in consecutive games. It's not necessarily a bad thing if different guys are doing it, but I don't even know if you go back and look. I don't even know if there was guys doing it if they had a 100-yard receiver in consecutive games. Not necessarily just the same one, just somebody stepping up with a 100-yard game back to back. So that's really if they need to grow, it is really in that receiving room. They've definitely put in work. It'll be interesting to see how much they've progressed from a season ago. But again, these guys have to stay healthy.
Yeah,
I think that's really the biggest key as the season goes along. They did get bigger. Hudson Clement got bigger, Trent Ray got bigger, and that should help them, prevent injuries where they're not nearly as small taking those hits. And really, this is just year two for those guys. So they still have a lot of football left ahead of them. Don't expect them to be 1,000-yard receivers, but they definitely have a chance to be 1,000-yard receivers. And we don't really know how, Rodney Gallagher's second year, they tried to find, there was another one just kind of talked about where they were trying to find ways to get him the ball because he's just a playmaker, but he's just really learning how to play wide receiver. They say he made strides, but when you think about last year, he wasn't a complete wide receiver. So he may have made strides, but not necessarily to be that guy. So it'll be interesting to see how that group shakes out. It's really an area that's been just very lackluster. Really no one going up and making plays consistently, but saw it in Jalen Ray, saw it in Hudson Clement last year. You expect it from Rodney Gallagher. We know Bray has the capability. So will it translate? Can they get over that hump? That's again, wait and see until the end of the season. I'm probably not going to see really much more than I haven't seen it before in practice, where they've made spectacular catches, made great plays. Preston Fox is he's always making these ridiculous catches, putting his body on the line. Another one that kind of needs to stay healthy. Um, but I
very
mean,
good depth
he
piece.
he's always going to put his body on the line. That's just kind of how the player that he is. But there's five receivers right there that can all make plays. So they just kind of need to make that translate and maybe kind of get those 100 yards games from guys consistently. Whether it's, 1 through 5, do it the first 5 weeks, that's great. It doesn't have to be the same player, but if you got 5 straight games of a 100-yard receiver, you're doing pretty well for yourself.
Yeah, I mean Rodney too. He was basically like you said. He was almost kind of like a gadget guy this past year, and it's not
Yeah.
a knock on Rodney. It's just he really didn't play receiver. A lot of people forget about that. He was
Yeah.
a wildcat quarterback basically at his high school, didn't have to play receiver all that much, if at all. So this is a major transition for him. This offseason is huge for him. I'm excited to see where he's at in that development process. Just looking at his skills, the traits that he has, I think he can make it very quickly. But we'll see. I think regardless, you've got to find ways to get the ball in his hands. That's what they did towards the end of last season when they got him more involved. Now, same church, different pew, going over to the defensive side of the ball. What newcomers did you see, freshmen again, freshman transfers, same question, that maybe catch your attention?
Really their footwork. The two kids from Northwestern. I know his number now. Number one.
Hollis and Joseph. Yeah.
I think Hollis is one. Whoever
Yeah.
number
Hollis is
one.
one.
Saw some good things from him just in little
He's
one-on-one.
big too.
But yeah, big, big. They all got length. Just seeing the footwork from him was reassuring. Didn't really get, so focused kind of on what was going on, trying to get some footage that I was allowed to get close in. Can't have that wide footage for the formations, but we'll get to see more of them. Really, defense is so hard to judge. You can do the corners, but again, I was more focused kind of getting some runs from Jaheim, stuff like that for social media. So did definitely see some better footwork, but that's one of those things too. How good have the receivers gotten?
I
If
mean,
they
and,
do
and
end up
again,
locking up the receivers, Is that good or is it bad?
And how many times have we like you watch these spring practices or spring games? You're like, man, the offense looks light years ahead. Well, I mean, it's basically 7-on-7 football when they're not
Right.
allowed to tackle. So until
It's
these
it's
guys
it's
can
definitely
actually get
different,
thudding, you don't know about the
but
defense.
they're bigger kids, so
Right.
they're
Yeah.
bigger guys. They got length. Looks like they can cover. We'll kind of see how it progresses. Again, they kind of get to know each other's, ticks, whatever, and you get kind of comfortable guarding the same group of guys all the time. So I think I think they're in a very good position in the secondary. Like I said, there's a lot of names out there. There's a lot of guys that have the potential, and there's a lot of guys that's already done it, like both those guys from Northwestern, and they're going to do a lot of cross training, playing safety, so they can really mix it up in the secondary and try to confuse quarterbacks. If you see Hollis at safety, like all of a sudden you just saw him over there guarding your Y. He's at safety. It can throw you off as a quarterback. So I think they're going to try to do a lot of that. I think when Dante Wright left, I think it was a good move by Neil Brown and the staff just to have
Control that.
Shavon Brown control all of the secondary. I think that was a really smart move on their part because not so much that there was mixed signals, but you can kind of get everybody in a hole and everybody, especially when you're cross training, know where everybody's supposed to be. So I think that's a group of a lot. Obviously, there's a lot of eyes on that group, but I think it's a group that's going to be able to handle it because again, there's just a lot of guys in there, whether they were within the program or transferred in, that can make an immediate impact and one guy goes down, the next guy goes in, and you're not going to have this huge drop off like we've seen in years past
Yeah.
after they're kind of ravished by the portal.
Well, I mean, and also with last year, I mean, obviously injuries suck. Like, there's
Right.
no good thing about
There's
that.
been a
But
lot of injuries in the secondary the last couple of years. On top of the portal, there's been
yeah,
a lot of injuries. So they're providing some depth. Look, they said that they like the depth at linebacker and in the secondary now. But of course, a lot of injuries can change that. But there is a lot of bodies out there right now, and that's something that you just
well,
can't really see. Well, I should say capable bodies where they're not real little guys. It's like freshmen or walk on trying to make it. These are scholarship kids, all big with the length that is strong and can knock receivers off their route. And that's really been one of the biggest issues is having to play so far off the ball, not being able to play up and knock a receiver, knock the timing off, has really been an issue for this defense. So I think that's something. I'm not saying it's totally fixed. We'll have to kind of wait and see, but I think that's something that they can start steering that towards where hey, we can go up and play more press coverage.
I mean, I think you're onto something there, though, like with the scholarship guys, because, and no offense to like, I don't know, the Justin Arndts of the world or the Malachi Ruffins. I mean, those guys, they played their role well when
Yeah,
they had to, or Nana Cairo.
definitely.
Like,
Hey, it ended up being good. I'm saying
yeah.
when
But when you
if we
have
had to
these
throw
guys that are
Ruffin in as a
established,
freshman or sophomore, that's a
yeah.
problem. So once
And when
they got going,
And when you look at this too deep, like I said, with the injuries, injuries suck, but you already know Trey Lathan, as long as he's healthy, he's going to be a playmaker. But what you probably wouldn't have known had he not got hurt, is what you can get out of Ben Cutter. So now you got the answer out of Ben Cutter. He's only going to get better. And it's the same thing I think you could even say with like, I don't even know, some of these other guys in the back end. I don't want to like single anybody out because
Montre Miller's back.
Montre Miller's
He
a
was
good
a
one.
kid
Yeah.
that got hurt and didn't even get to play last year.
Right.
So
Jacoby
there's names in
Spells,
there.
who was probably everyone's, expected guy to really bloom early in his career, hasn't really got that opportunity yet. But that's what I'm saying. You got guys like Jacoby Spells fighting to be a starter. Maybe he's a second string. He might be even third string. You look at the front all the way to the back of this defense. There is a pretty much a solid two deep at every single spot. In years past, you had question marks at starting positions. That's not really the case this year.
Yeah, I don't think there is a deep on the front line this year as they were last year, but they were
Right.
really
Losing Durjai sucks too.
well, they were really deep last year up
Yeah.
front. So they're still deep, but they're not as deep as last year. And I think Neil Brown even said they're still a little undersized up front for what they want to do. But you got some guys up there that have high motors or whatever, however you want to call it, that are just relentless, got great ball pursuit, and that's pretty much what you're asking for. I think where they're going to try they're going to try to get pressure off the edge more often than not
Ty
with
French, man. Whew.
the way they're trying to scheme it up. So It'd be good to get some push up front. I think they can. I think there's some guys that once they have a really good summer, may put them in a really good position heading into fall. But I think that defensive line is a question mark. It's not again. I just think it's that they're undersized. But what can they do with their size in the fall? Really going to be a question because look, there's been some great defensive linemen that were considered undersized
Yeah.
throughout its history, really. So plenty of room to grow there. Wouldn't be surprised if they ended up adding a piece or two up there. Be kind of interesting to see if they do make any moves in portal. Obviously, they're probably going to have to because there
Guys are
are
going to
going to
leave.
be guys that hit the portal. I don't think it'll be any big name guys, but they're probably going to lose some players where they can actually add some players as well.
So my guy that I really I'm eager to see what he's going to look like this fall because I think he's arguably one of the most important pieces of this thing defensively, but probably doesn't get a lot of attention is Sean Martin. Like he's got to make that jump. We expected that last year. It really didn't show. I mean, he was good in spots, but he was really inconsistent. Thought he was going to take a major step in his pass rush. Took a step backwards. He has got to be that guy that can help create pressure up front in the interior. You're going to have Ty French, you're going to have Tyron Bradley off the edge, but Sean Martin's got to be a big piece of this thing moving forward. If there's one key piece for you, who would that be?
Trotter.
Trot. Yeah, that's a
Besides
good.
Trotter.
That's a good one. Yeah,
Middle
he's the forgotten piece
linebacker.
of this.
I mean, it's no secret. Middle linebacker is the quarterback of the defense. He's a really high IQ football kid. Obviously, with his family, his brother played at Clemson. Um,
Do you think
so
he starts
absolutely,
over
I
Ben
think
Cutter?
yeah. Again, that's those two inside. I know one of them's considered a will, but you know, Trotter can't play every play. I don't think. I think in this day and age where everything's so spread out, and you
Well,
got
especially coming off the injury that he had
it's
too.
yeah, it's better to kind of give guys breaks here and there. So yeah, I think he's probably going to receive most of the snaps. I would assume. We'll see how it shakes out. He's still got to do it on the field, but he loves film, and that is really big as he understands how to study film. So he's kind of ahead of the curve, even as a redshirt freshman. He's ahead of the curve of a lot of kids uh, in his class in his age bracket, however you want to view it. So to me, I think he's going to be a really big piece of this defense. I know the coaching staff absolutely love him, uh, primarily based on what he did last year, staying ready, even though he was never going to play, but he was in all the film sessions. He was, he treated it like he was playing that week. So he understands exactly how everything's supposed to go. And really, it's just how does he come off that injury? Does he have the speeds? Does he have the strength? All those kind of intangibles that you saw that he was recruited for. Can he get back to it this year? I believe so. He's full go right now in spring, so I'll be very excited to see. Hopefully, get to see them hit and kind of do a little bit of scrimmaging next week. Probably will be if they do be very very little, but kind of I'm really excited to see him fly around.
I'm looking at the spring media schedule for the rest of this spring period. It doesn't look like there's another practice open to the media. Am I wrong in that?
Yeah, you're very wrong.
Okay. I'm just going off
That's
of
that's a week by
what they
week
sent
basis.
what they sent me here, and this is
That's
just
great.
all.
That's
So when is
fantastic.
the next media
Won't
practice?
know till next week. It's a week by
Okay.
week basis.
So what we'll do is we'll get Chris back on here each time that they go out there and they're able to see something. We'll hop on here for a few minutes and chat. But that'll do it for this first edition of Inside Spring Practice at WVU. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube at Mountaineers Now. Give us that thumbs up as well. Give us a follow on X at Mountaineers Now there too. For Christopher Hall, I'm Skylar Callen. You've been watching Between Years. Again, no show tomorrow morning. We'll be back here on Friday.